So Davis, again, like we talked about a little bit, redirecting issues primarily is kind of the big issue. Okay.
I was actually really surprised when he walked in here.
How well he did?
Yeah. I was like...
That's more normal than you think.
Yeah, he would have been really whining, really like over the top, so I was like, is this my dog? Like, you know what's really interesting about stuff like that is like we'll see that almost 100% of the time with dogs that are like reactive is when they come here the first time, you see almost none of it because they're so overwhelmed by everything going on. You know, if you look at reactivity at its core, right, it's kind of like a mentally dominant game that these dogs play where they hyper-fixate on one thing, right? So the more things there are, they can't really split their brain very effectively onto all of those things. So we'll see typically that the reactions are more subdued unless you're in a scenario like I think you described it like the pack walk where it's like it's subdued, and then it just kind of explodes out at one thing once like the pressure is too high, you know? Well, I've been tying him out just on a crate and on a door, and he's just
chilling
there, and he watches dogs, he watches dogs coming in and out, introducing him to other dogs selectively.
Good. All right.
So this will probably be like one of the first times I've been able to see any reactivity.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Now, what sorts of things do you notice like particularly trigger him? I know obviously dogs, right? But scenarios, any particular scenarios? FedEx,
UPS, the mailman.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you he injured my husband.
Yes, you did say that.
Directing. Because of seeing.
Sure. Yeah.
Today, what I did when we kind of just, hey, no, Davis. See, like this.
What's he doing wrong?
Well, I mean, like, I feel like he's kind of staring.
Sure. Good look. We'll get into all that, obviously. So is this stuff typically you would try to interrupt, like when you see that?
Yes, because I know where it leads to.
Yeah, I gotcha. Sure. Okay. So one big thing I'll see people kind of fall into the trap of is because they know what their dog is capable of, and they know that in certain situations they will explode or redirect or this or that. What winds up happening is we wind up kind of almost like preemptively nagging the dog, which actually could escalate their behavior sometimes, you know? And we don't give them an opportunity to organically like decompress. So here's the thing, when I look at like reactivity, right, I look at a dog who's concerned about other dogs, right? And they're choosing a completely inappropriate response, obviously, of reacting in that case, and obviously then redirecting past that with the arousal. So they're concerned about other dogs, and if we look at reactivity, it's typically like a spectrum, right? It's not like a lot of people look at like aggression or reactivity or anxiety and stuff like that as like an on-off switch, right? Where it's like the dog is either reacting or they're not reacting kind of thing, which obviously we want to get it from reacting to not reacting, but typically speaking, we have to see them go through this progression before they get to that point, as opposed to it just being like, okay, they're reacting, then we've stopped the reactivity. You know what I mean? And in order to get them past that, typically in my experience what this stuff looks like is we give some sort of clear direction so we could have something to hold the dog accountable to, obviously. Let's say hypothetically the sit right now because you have him in a sit, right? So he's in the sit and he's concerned about the dog over there. A lot of times what we'll see at first is the dog's used to reacting, so they'll just fully break the sit and start reacting, right? We need to figure out a way to obviously hold them accountable and get them realizing you still have to stay in the sit, right? Yep. So we get them to hold the sit then at that point, and then usually what we'll see it turn into is they'll hold the sit, but they'll just be like, you know, like making a bunch of noise and wound up and all this kind of stuff, right? And where most people get it wrong is at that point, they'll continue to try to correct the behavior because it's like, well, he's still reacting, right? He's still aroused, he's still vocalizing, whatever, right? But that's kind of the first step where he's saying, this is really hard for me right now. That dog is right there and I'm used to getting up and reacting, but I'm making the decision to hold this position on my own, but I'm still concerned about it, right? As that progressions, what we'll see is that kind of really aroused, I'm holding the sit and I'm whining and I'm shaking all over the place and stuff like that, will turn into maybe just subtle whining and staring, right? Then the subtle whining and staring turns into just the staring, right? Then just the staring turns into I'm gonna stare and then I'm gonna check away for a minute and then I'm gonna stare again and then I'm gonna check away for a little bit and then I'm gonna stare. Then it kind of progressively turns into I just am chill with this, you know what I mean? And I think that, you know, because it's them displaying that they're concerned, concerned, by us getting on those displays of them being concerned where they haven't made the mistake yet, but we know they're thinking about making the mistake, you keep them in this cycle of being concerned, and the micromanaging, again, just kind of causes them to just escalate and like bottle it up and just explode, you know? So yeah, that scenario right there, I didn't see him do anything wrong. I saw him be like, hey, there's a dog over there, and I'm keeping my eyes on it, you know?
He's always like kept me on my toes.
Sure.
Just, like looking.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. You know, let's take a less intense example to help kind of demonstrate the process a little bit more, right? So my Malinois is ridiculously prey-driven, obviously, right? He's a Malinois.
Yeah.
So squirrels, deer, rabbits, stuff like that. Those are things. And when he was younger, he used to struggle a lot with impulse control, right? Do you think that it is a realistic expectation to say, okay, cool, I know that you're a Malinois and you're going to be really aroused when you see these animals, and I don't even want you to look at them. You know what I mean? That's an unrealistic expectation. That's going to be almost even more stressful than him just, I'm holding my down, I see that thing over there, I would like to go chase that thing, but I'm choosing not to do it, but I'm still going to keep my eye on it. I got no problem with that. You know what I mean? And with him, as I've worked through this stuff with him, and I've held him just to a clear expectation, whatever it is, whether it's a sit, whether it's a down, whether it's a come command, whether it's leash walking, whatever, and I didn't focus on the staring, and I didn't focus on, you know, he would see the squirrel at first, and he'd hold his heel position, maybe like stiff as a board, and really amped up and stuff like that, right? And I just kind of let him do that, let him do that, let him do that, and I saw that progression slowly go back to, like, he still gets excited when he sees them, but he doesn't chase them. He'll hold his position perfectly fine, and he'll actually like check out periodically as he's looking at them. Like, I used to live in Lyndhurst on the east side. There were deer freaking everywhere, right? And I would take my dogs for walks, and I started posting all these videos because people used to be like, oh, it's prey drive, you can't get past prey drive, this, that, whatever. And I would post these videos of like my 4 dogs holding down stays, like with me away from them, with a family of deer walking like 20 feet away, right? And they would look at them, you know, they'd hold it, they'd look over, and then they'd look back at me, then they'd look over, and then they'd look back at me, but they knew that they had to maintain that position, right? So I essentially loosened up my criteria just a little bit from like, don't even look at the other thing, to just keep yourself under control, right? And then I got really firm on that expectation, right? So you you open up the criteria just a little bit to make it easier for the dog to be successful with, and then you hold them much more accountable for that thing, and that's what I found to be kind of the magic solution for totally getting past a lot of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where a lot of people do the opposite. They keep the criteria really, really small, and then they try to get away with using less firm corrections for those really small things to kind of just interrupt, poke, 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 right? And it's an unrealistic expectation for the dog to be really successful with, and it's naggy, and again, it just makes it worse. Yeah. So that's kind of overall how I look at a lot of this kind of stuff.
Like I said, one of like the biggest triggers is like, he will, like, we'll be up at my kid's school,
sure,
he'll be in it down, and he'll hear that mail truck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And he is like, up, and he's like
ready to go.
I mean, he doesn't even have to see it. He hears it, and I'm just like, it's real hard for me to bring him down.
I got you.
Usually what we could do is we get up, we start moving, we start like doing stuff.
Yeah.
But he sees.
Understood. Yeah. And there's going to be certain triggers that initially are really hard, right? People coming over the house. We work with a lot of people that have dogs that are highly reactive to guests coming in the door, right? And we try to get them to hold their bed command or place or whatever, right? Yeah. And first couple times you get them to do that. Vinny, my Malinois, another good example, when he was younger, and he's like 8 now, so like he's past most of the stuff. But when he was younger, I would put him in a bed stay. I would have a guest come in, and he would sit on that bed and just fucking scream, you know, just because he was so amped up, right? And it was kind of one of those things where I knew no amount of correcting that was going to get him to stop. I needed to let him just experience that moment and just take all those emotions. And since he was used to exploding it at the door or whatever it was, he had to let that energy out somewhere, right? And that energy got let out in the form of vocalization or shaking or this or that, right? And as they experience that, again, it becomes less and less of a big deal. So. Okay, cool. So what I want to do today is I want to just take a look at where everything's at, kind of see how he does on a walk, see how he does seeing some distractions, see how you're enforcing all this kind of stuff, so I can get a read off of what may be some of the issue, you know, and then we can kind of talk about a game plan and stuff from there. So let's do this. We're going to take him for a little walk. We're going to take him down to the street, make a right on the sidewalk. I'll have you lead the way, and I just want to take a look at how it looks. Now, with the redirecting stuff, does he only do that when he's really, really amped up? Like if he's reacting at something and you try to correct him?
Yes.
Okay. Like he won't do it like in this context?
I don't know, like if there's another dog.
Yeah, but outside of other dogs, like if you were to say right now, just give him a higher correction, would he try to redirect, do you think?
He hasn't really directed that much on the e-collar.
Okay.
Actually at all, my memory.
Has it been mostly the leash and prong?
The prong, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I know when we talked over the phone, you said that you had done some training with the prong collar and that kind of helped you a little bit.
Yeah.
How often do you use it still? And how do you decide when you use it and don't use it?
Well, I do use it when I go to work.
Yep.
Because I hook it up to a high traffic,
yep.
12-inch tab or whatever.
Sure.
And it's going in and out of work.
Yeah,
so
I gotcha.
It has just long enough for me to grab it.
Yeah.
And it's not dragging.
Sure.
And he's also a very huge advocate of going ahead. But he will, on a lot of occasions, walk better when the leash is dropped and not even on him.
Yep. And why do you think that's the case?
Leashes are barriers for dogs.
Sure.
And I don't know. Maybe he feels like he could trust me more though. Maybe. I don't know.
So I would agree with you. Obviously, a leash is a barrier, and when we're holding a leash really short like this, and he's constantly feeling some sort of restraint on it, that's going to keep that forward drive obviously going, right? What I've found to be the case as far as, because everybody tells me that when my dog's off leash, they're better behaved when they're on the leash, or they listen better.
Yeah.
And I find that it's because we as the owner are much more on top of the dog when they're off leash, because we physically don't have that leash we could almost like subconsciously micromanage them with, you know? So once we get up here, we're gonna cross into this park. I'm gonna have you try something, and I just want to see what it looks like.
Weird body language when he has it on.
But he's like, it's not like debilitating to him or anything. He'll work with it on.
He'll fall asleep on it and stuff with it on.
Cool. Do you have it with you?
I do not.
That's okay.
My stuff got moved around this morning.
It's no problem.
Get furniture.
Yep.
I don't have my
So let's do this. Can I see your remote real quick?
Sure.
So what I want you to do here is I want you to just start walking with him, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold just the handle of the leash. So I don't want you having it very straight.
Okay.
And give your heel command, whatever, start walking. And whenever you think he's gotten out of, we're gonna loosen the criteria like we talked about a little bit. Whenever you feel like he's gotten outside of a perimeter where he's no longer paying attention to you, that's where you're gonna mark with no.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's all I want you to do, and I just wanna kind of see what we get now that we give him a little bit more slack with this.
Okay.
That looked pretty good. Now, right now, try to avoid a lot of the extra fluff that you're adding in and the talking to him and stuff. You've given your heel command right at the beginning, so he knows what position he's expected to be in, obviously. So all we want to do is mark with no if he's out of position. Now, that one that you said no, like right at the beginning, I didn't see any change from what he was at before, so let's loosen it just a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm talking like really like he's no longer even with you right now, you know? Because this looks good. I have no problem with where he's at right now.
Are you doing this?
He's on his best behavior right now. So that looks pretty good. So let's turn. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing, but we're just gonna be walking. So instead of going back and forth like that, simulate just a regular walk here.
Okay.
And we'll make a left up here and just start making our way around. We got a little playground over here and stuff. We'll see if he gets interested in. And then let's come to a stop and then put him into a sit. Now see how right there when you stop, you immediately tightened up on that leash again there?
Okay.
Try to have that stop without that at this point. We have to kind of separate like teaching stages versus proofing stages, right? Teaching stages, we're using a lot of guidance, we're using a lot of help, we're using a lot of low levels to condition the dog into this kind of stuff, right? Proofing stages, we're going, like you said, you've been doing this stuff for like 3 years with him, right? He knows this stuff, right? So, well, listen, that's okay, right? But we want to raise our expectation of him a little bit at this point, and we need to start holding him too. You've been doing this for long enough now that you know what to do right now, right?
No, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes that's why I'm talking to you.
I understand. I think what I'm seeing right now is a dog that knows what to do, right? So loose on that leash. Not that loose.
me.
Yeah, right. How's his down command?
What's that?
How's his down command?
Oh, this is good. Davis down.
Perfect. So we'll just have him chilling this down for a minute.
Right. Yeah, this is usually, you know, I've been taking him up to, you know, my kid's school.
Sure.
Every time I can, and it's just working him around this perimeter.
Yeah, I got you.
So, is that, I mean, the whole running, things running by him, going by him.
Oh yeah, understood. I mean, there's definitely, you know, we're gonna have to get into harder distractions on this. The biggest takeaway I want you to get from today, though, is this concept of loosen the criteria, but be much more firm about the expectation of that criteria then, right? So all the looking, all the this, all the that, right now you need to be looking at just black and white. This is what I want you to do. Down, sit, come, heel, whatever, right? And this is the expectation for doing that thing as far as the consequences for it.
Okay.
So, all right, let's do this. We're gonna keep walking, tell him heel, and let's keep cruising.
Heel.
And then again, same deal, I'll tell you where to give your correction for this.
Now just a verbal no? Just
a verbal no, that's it. And I'll be giving a tap on the e-collar after it. I'm just kind of playing around with levels and stuff here. Now, it could be coincidence. I would assume not, though. As soon as we loosened up on that leash and we stopped some of the constant nagging with it, his walk looks 9 times better already.
Damn leash, buddy.
Leashes, they're the enemy. Right there. Tell him no. There we go. And no pop, though. Try to avoid that, because we know that's one of his big triggers here. At this point, we want to go into all of our work with him almost pretending the leash isn't even on, right? We're communicating verbally and using our commands in order to do this. So let's keep cruising. But because we're loose on the leash, we could see those mistakes that he's making now, right? Where sometimes when it's short, we never see that full commitment to I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Which is why, again, going back to why is he better off leash, because you see those things then. Same deal, don't worry about this right now. You got it? Yeah, I've seen a little bit like cueing him up, like, well, almost like you're kind of stopping and waiting for him to like, Davis, you know, before you give that command. Where I go into all these scenarios with the expectation that he should always have one ear turned to as enough where if I give a command, he should be compliant with it, obviously. Same deal with the bending over, giving help with your down. Not that hand commands are bad by any means, but we want to make sure that he's listening to us, and listening to our verbals.
I see what you're saying, and I think a lot of it has to do with, like, I still have work mode in me. You know,
I totally get it.
It's like silent.
And this is where, yeah. I get it. And again, teaching stages, we're using a lot of help with things, right? But this dog is out of teaching stages. This dog knows this stuff, right? All right, so we'll have him hang out there. I'm gonna grab a dog real quick. I'm just gonna walk around right over this area and I wanna see what he does. I'm just gonna hang out here for a minute. Again, you see the little quiver and he's staring and stuff. That's all totally fine as long as he maintains command. Same deal. Bunch of dogs coming in. Of course he's gonna look at the dogs coming in. That's startling, you know what I mean? As long as he holds himself together. It's the only thing that I care about. Pretty good. Now see how he's kind of starting to engage his nose a little bit as well? Now obviously I'm not going to let him get up and come sniff the dog or anything right now. But the natural progression that you're kind of seeing of like, I'm concerned, I don't know what's going on, I'm going to kind of avoid, but I'm a little curious, right? We want to see it shift quicker to that. And that's what I mean about this all on a spectrum moving in the right direction. And we have to allow him to internalize this and go through all of those emotions. We can't just go in and stop them all, you know? Cool, tell him heel and bring him on this way. And then go ahead and pick a spot kind of over at the end of the van and then stop and just give your down command. No cues or anything with this.
He was down.
Give him a second. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna grab another dog now, and I'm gonna walk by this way, and we'll see what we get if it's anything different outside. He's getting all sorts of distractions today. Same deal, don't worry about the staring. If you want, you could position yourself on the other side of him.
Yeah, I'm running 3. I'm running half.
I'll just hang out here for a minute. Again, whining and stuff, don't worry about it. I purposely picked like the most excitable dog I could here. Get myself knocked over. Hold on, dude. It's pretty good. Not too shabby, big guy. He's like, I'm proving you wrong.
Right? It's like I'm poking my reactive dog with a stick.
I know. It's like, do it, do it.
Good.
Nice.
Hey, give me another one. Bring another one out.
Yeah, right? Just gonna kind of walk around a little bit here. Again, whining, a little concern, obviously. It's hard for him. He's used to acting a fool, so. Nice, it's pretty good. I'll take it. All right, let me put this dude away real quick. Let's just go right over here. We'll let these cars and stuff go by. Just pop them into a down.
What's that?
Pop him into a down. Loose on your leash.
Down.
Give him a second. If he doesn't do it, mark with no. Tell him down again. Give him a second. Perfect.
Point of worrying about positioning.
Not at all. So this is other places where I vary from like a lot of other trainers. I always say obedience is for functional purpose. That's it, right? We are not training a competition dog here, right? If we were doing that, we would not be doing all of this right now, right? Yeah. So the things that I look at as far as my expectation with things, I don't even get crazy with a heel, right? We teach a come command, which is our universal come to me and stay with me. Yeah. Basically, the expectation is just keep your attention on me and stay in my bubble with me, you know? Because again, looser criteria, more strict about the expectation of that position. Then at that point, same deal with if I tell my dog sit and they lay down, I don't give a shit, right? Like if you're more comfortable laying down, like I'm not gonna nag you over that, right? Honestly, with our board and trains, we don't even teach a sit. We teach a down command. That's it. Because it's like what, I've never in my life run into a situation where I need a sit command over a down command. You know what I mean? There's not a single one, right? So all of that kind of stuff, like, you know, given the fact that my typical expectation with come is be in my bubble, if I tell my dog down while I'm walking, they could down in front of me, to the side of me, behind me. I don't care, as long as you get in the position. Okay. So, again, just looser criteria to be more strict about the expectation with it. Okay. We'll let some of these cars go by here, and then we'll just start walking a little bit. There's not a ton of dogs out, but just want to kind of see how he does in a new environment. Now notice how he's laying down right now. He's got his chin down here. Yeah. Again, other things, just getting into like how I look at a lot of stuff. You know, there's some trainers out there that talk about a double down. I'm sure you've heard of it, obviously.
I do like when he does that.
I like it. I think the concept of forcing the dog to do it is really stupid, but that's a whole nother conversation, obviously. But I use this stuff as a barometer of kind of where the dog's energy level is at, obviously. So we got into that sequence and kind of progression the dog goes through with the arouse, looking, staring, this, that. This is about as calm as it gets, obviously. So once I see him doing that on his own and engaging that state of mind on his own, that's when I really start realizing, okay, cool, he's actually getting comfortable with these things going on around him. Yeah. You know? You got to some extent turn that off. I always say I want to be aware that my dog has potential to do something at any point, right? But outside of that, like whatever reason he's doing it, unless he makes a mistake, I'm not going to be super worried about it. I'll watch, right? So like since there is a sliver of a possibility that every time we pass a person or a dog right now, there's a potential he may react, I will preemptively, at least until I start feeling like I've really got a handle on things, give myself plenty of space. So right there, how you kind of walk straight past, not that I have a huge problem with that, but like we talked about earlier when we were walking, if he were to have lunged there, he would have been able to actually get to them all the way, right? So I always create just enough distance where I don't have to worry too much. Is it intent? Is it not intent? I could just watch him and see, does he make a mistake or does he not make a mistake? You know what I mean? So you kind of just go into all the situations like that where it's like, you know, maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't do it, but unless he does it, I'm not super concerned about it. I think you just need a little bit more direction as far as how to take this stuff to the next step. And this is what I see with most trainers. Just in general, how they coach their clients and stuff like that, is they coach the clients really, really well through teaching stages of things, but just that real world application, there's just something missing, you know? And that's why a lot of the clients aren't able to be successful, and they're kind of stuck in this quote unquote like management stage forever, when the only reason why it's that is because you're not holding the dog to the standard of which they know, you know?
Looking back, I guess I was never giving him the time to process things that he's going through. In between, like, oh my God, is he going to do this?
Yeah.
Is he going to correct him? Like,
yeah. You know, there's a process for all of it, you know, and you have to be fair and empathetic. So there's going to be some situations that, at least right now, as we're starting to work through this, are going to be too hard for him, you know. But you know, he could definitely get past this stuff. Okay, yeah. So I'm not seeing anything too crazy. Like, obviously there's a lot more things we got to take a look at. Like, today was kind of just like a baseline. Where is he at with stuff? Where are you at with stuff? And like, what sorts of things are going to be ultimately what help you out? He knows everything, right? That's very apparent. He knows how to do all of these individual things, right? You're nagging him a little too much and having too like strict of a criteria that's not allowing him to really get past some of these actual emotions. You know what I mean? So in the immediate, from an obedience standpoint, the two things that I could see you do here is only look at what your expectation is. Forget the looking, forget why he's doing the things, forget this, forget that. Just focus on, you need to stay in position, right? You need to stay in position, whatever it may be, right? And loosen up your criteria with your walking just a little bit. You should always be walking him on that loose leash right now. If you're finding yourself, and it's such a bad, hard habit to break, if you're finding yourself choking up on that leash, you're doing him a disservice because you're never allowing him to really understand where he needs to stay. Second thing, accountability-wise, I mean, he worked at like a 70 to an 80 pretty much the whole session today. So I'm not saying that's going to be the case at home, obviously, but what I'm saying is you're probably big time underwhelming him with corrections. The beginning of the walk, when I was watching you walk him, I couldn't even tell you were correcting him with the e-collar. I mean, he wasn't giving a shit about it at all, right? And you need to look at that and be like, what's the point of the e-collar? We could talk all day long about, oh, it's a positive and the dog should like it and it's just communication, this and that. We're applying an aversive to stop a behavior. That's the point of an e-collar, you know what I mean? So you have to make sure the aversive is aversive enough, obviously, right? So play around with it a little bit, you know? We don't want him yipping and yelping every time we hit it, obviously, but we do need to see that he cares about that correction and fixes himself, right? We still need to look at socialization, obviously. I'm still curious to see where he's at really socially with things. And, you know, obviously there's some more proofing and like inside of the house things and stuff like that that we got to take a look at. You know, we're kind of just scratching the surface of some of it. But I think that there is a lot for you to accomplish with this dog still.